Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1991 sequel, Guyver 2, Dark Hero. Now, this film, to me personally, is an overlooked gem. It's not perfect. It has some genuine flaws. For instance, it's too long. Did not need to be 2 hours. I don't know why it has a running time of 2 hours, essentially. That's just too long for this kind of movie. And there are some moments where it is a bit too hokey in terms of the writing or the dialogue. And yes, some of the acting is admittedly pretty poor. But there's just so much about this film, though, that kicks ass that this film deserves a lot more recognition. I mean, the Blu-ray that I'm showing here isn't even official because this doesn't even have an official Blu-ray anywhere, which is bullshit. Because this is a much better Guyver film than the first movie, and that has a Blu-ray from Arrow Video. So, Guyver 2 Dark Hero is the sequel to the 1991 film The Guyver. It even does have a scene where Sean essentially breaks up with Miski, or Mizuki, and it also references some things that occurred in the first film. So it is canon and it is a direct continuation of that film. But it's so different in tone and in the presentation that in a lot of ways it's like a completely different take on Guyver in live action, despite a very similar costume design for the suit and even similar zoonoids. For instance, Alisker's design is pretty much just copied and pasted from one of the zoonoids that are featured later on in the film during the movie's explosive and exciting climax. So there are some things that are recycled and reused and definitely referenced when it comes to the first film. But unlike the first movie, this film doesn't suck. Like, this film is legitimately a good movie. I know there are a lot of people who feel otherwise, teach their own. I actually think this film is nowhere near as corny or cheesy or as bad as some people make it out to be. This isn't a film that I feel guilty about liking. This isn't a movie where I enjoy ironically and do a commentary on it with my friends. No, this is a movie where I sit down and have a blast with it because it's a legitimately enjoyable ride. The film was directed by Steve Wang, and he directed some aspects of the first film. And by some aspects, I mean he directed some scenes. He was the co-director of that movie. And he also directed some episodes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And he directed some other things on his own that showcased his passion for practical effects because he is an effects artist. Steve Wang isn't a makeup effects artist in his own right. He worked with Stan Winston. He worked on the Monster Squad. So, as well as a bunch of other movies that Stan Winston's studio was optioned or contracted to work on. So, he has a lot of experience in the makeup effects arena, and that's a big reason why this film, despite how low of a budget it has, looks as good as it does and also has so many legitimately great practical makeup effects, whether it's some of the Zoonoid designs or the updated design of the Guyver, which I personally find the design in this to be a massive step up when it comes to the look of the Guyver compared to the 1991 film. I just feel this looks just so much more badass and menacing and cool, and it's just a design that I really do admire. I think it's a gorgeous design by Steve Wang and company. It's one of those things where you first see it in action, especially with the blue light and the shadows and the fog. It's a moment that almost takes your breath away. Like, it's just so fucking cool. And Steve Wang just did a spectacular job with this film for the most part. This movie has some really impressive shots when it comes to the movement of the camera, the way it flows. It's a very uh, surreal, strange film in a lot of ways, and the direction does tie into that. There are some sequences that are straight up nightmarish. There are some sequences that are straight up awesome and just jaw dropping when it comes to the scope and the action that's on the screen. I mean, there are some really absolutely amazing, incredible action and fights in this film. And it's done with people in suits. And it doesn't look like it's super cheap, or you have people who don't really know how to do choreography with people in suits, or they don't want to do that much with people in suits. So you just have like the regular actor doing most of it without wearing a suit. No. And unlike in the first film, there's not a lot of just lame blocks and judo throws. No. I mean, there's some really just dynamic and just impressive fight choreography in this film. That's right up there with some of the best in the genre. I'm not fucking around and I'm not kidding. If you ever do see this film, you will see what I mean. I mean, the choreography in the fight between Guyver and the Guyver Zoanoid just by itself is really awesome, and it's full of a ton of variety and a lot of risk that's at play and some really nice stunt work. It's a great fight. And the other fights that Guyver has with other Zoonoids is also really exciting and thrilling to watch, and it's just so much fun. It's everything Power Rangers wasn't, because Power Rangers doesn't have an edge. This has a razor sharp edge to it. I mean, the Guyver fucks people up in this movie. Slices Zoonoids' heads off, slices them to shreds, busts out their eyes. Um, he does not fuck around. I mean, in the beginning of the movie, he takes out a bunch of drug dealers, and it's something that you could see straight out of like a relatively moderate budget action movie, like Rapid Fire or something. So it was just really a change of pace for the franchise, and a change of direction that was needed for this series. And it's a shame we didn't get another film because it was done so cheap. With a budget of only $900,000, you could have done another one easily. That could have been direct to video, brought back David Hayter and maybe a few other people, and had the Guyver face another threat, another foe, and make it rated R and violent and just crazy and fun. That it didn't happen because I don't think this film actually did that well on home video, which sucks because this is a good movie. The first Guyver I can watch for nostalgia, but I'm spending half of it cringing. With Guyver 2, there's a few moments where it's a little too long, or there's too much dialogue and there's not a lot going on. But even then, I'm still relatively invested because the plot is at least 10 times more interesting. And then once you get to the action and the monster bashing and the Guyver taking on Zoonoids and just epically kicking their ass. It's just it's an absolute joy to watch. And a big part of that is Steve Wang's direction. It's I honestly think it's some of the most impressive that I've seen from a low budget director, because of the way that everything just looks, from the production and art design, which is another thing about this film that is impressive. The designs of the alien ship and a few of the other alien elements in this movie. I mean, they pretty much built an entire interior of an alien spacecraft. And they even had shots where the spacecraft, which is underground, is lifting up because it's about to fly up into the air. And you even see like this big model moving upward in live action on camera. There's no camera tricks. It's not done in post. It's actually moving upward while there's other things that are inside the set that are falling over, or parts of it are crumbling. It's a really uh terrific example of practical set work and practical stunts and practical effects in general, and a big part of why it looks as good as it does is Steve Wang. You can tell he just loves working in this particular kind of wheelhouse, which is honestly something that you don't see a lot of nowadays. And you really did see more of around the time of this film's release. So it's just a shame that Steve Wayne didn't get a chance to do more films like this, because it's something that he was just so good at. He was so good at bringing these kind of stories to life and just showing them visually in a way that is just very dynamic and really impressive on a technical level. The screenplay by Nathan Long, the problems I have with it are not really the main plot. I think it starts out great. You have these drug dealers and these thugs who get taken out by the Guyver, and it establishes Guyver as a vigilante who's taken out criminals in a city, and it borrows some elements of Spider-Man, particularly the alien symbiote storyline, where when Peter had the symbiote would take over and it would do things without his permission. It would take control, and he would go out and fight crime. In a lot of ways, he'd be more aggressive than Peter normally would be. So the symbiote would do things and make him into something that he's not. Well, in Guyver 2, it's a very similar thing, where the Guyver will take over and cause Sean to kill people. And it's something that really conflicts him. And he's having a hard time with having all this blood on his hands, even if it is just a bunch of thugs and criminals. So there's some nice, legitimate drama and depth to this character now. And on top of that, you have this really fascinating mystery where he keeps drawing these spaceships on a piece of paper, and he keeps seeing these symbols, keeps having these nightmares and these dreams. And he eventually finds out that there's this expedition, this archaeological dig, and they found these symbols, and they match what he's seeing in his head and seeing in his nightmares. And he sets out to try to find this dig, and that's where he runs into Kronos again, because they're worldwide and they're not dead, and there's more zoonoids, and he also falls for a new flame. And honestly, I feel the way that the script wrote the romance between Sean and Corey, I thought that was, for the most part, really strong. I thought they developed a good chemistry. I legitimately did believe that they fell for one another. I thought they were a nice couple, and I felt that it did a good job slowly building up their romance and their connection with one another. I thought it was sweet. I thought it was charming. I thought it was everything that the romance in the first film was not. Where the script falters, though, is that it starts off strong. It has an interesting premise with the mystery of the spaceships and the archaeological dig and so on. So it's got a good setup, but like in the middle, it just sags a little too much because it spends a little bit too long on the romance. And then there's other stuff that it's trying to bring into the fold in terms of other characters and their dynamics and their motivations, like this FBI agent guy. And then there's way too many scenes of them digging at the site. There's like a whole montage of them digging and finding the spaceship, and that was just too long. So there were quite a few scenes where you're just like, okay, we get it. This did not need to be extended to this length. And there's also a lot of scenes where they just talk and talk, and it's just a bunch of talking and exposition. I don't think you needed to have the poor man's Ed Gale show up in a few scenes on a video screen and talk to the leader of the project, Crane. I don't think you really needed that. I don't think it was necessary. You could have just had Crane act on his own. You didn't really need to have that. So there are quite a few scenes where he will talk to Balkus and say, "Oh, I will get the mission done, sir." And it seems like they're trying to create the same dynamic that you had with David Gale in the first film, but it's just not the same. So if you're not going to have David Gale be that character, then to me it's just padding. It's just a waste of space and time. It would just you did not need those scenes. Um but once it really starts to get to the climax and you have the Zoonoids that are in full force and Sean shows up and saves Corey from a Zoonoid attack, and then you have the finale where the Zoonoids are trying to team up and fight the Guyver and beat him, and then you have the fight between the Guyver and the Guyver Zoonoid. That's where the film really picks up pace and speed, and the script does a legitimately solid job keeping you consistently invested and excited by what's unfolding on the screen. And I honestly didn't even mind the backstory that they had for the Guyver unit. I like the fact that the writer actually knew the source material and used the same backstory from the manga and from the anime, where the Guyver units were created to uh, fix the mistake that the aliens initially uh, built. They created the Zoonoids and they fucked up because the Zoonoids were initially uh, they created mankind. So they created mankind, and then they also created the Zoonoids, which were a mutated form of man. And because things just got so out of control with the Zoonoids, this other form of mankind, they created the Guyver units. So the Guyvers could take out the trash, so to speak, which were the Zoonoids, and fix their mistake. I like that. I like the fact that the writer knew the source material. And I don't mind the ending either, with the spaceship flying away. And I know some people criticize the effects. I'm okay. And the effects that sometimes with the green screen, yeah, it's kind of hokey looking, but it's a $900,000 film. And the fact that it's just only kind of hokey looking is impressive to me, considering the budget. I'm having a hard time speaking sometimes because I'm still blown away by how much they were able to accomplish with only $900,000. So yeah, the script, it has its problems, but for the most part it's a good script. It just needed a better middle. The middle just sags a little too much. And that's really the main problem, and maybe cut out some of the characters. That's really it. Now when it comes to the performances, David Hayter, I think he did a good job. There were some moments where he was mugging for the camera a little too much, especially when he's trying to psych himself up to jump off a cliff or something and turn into the Guyver. Or, like he just has this determined look on his face that really just looks like he's constipated and he's having a hard time taking a shit. The whole sort of, that kind of thing. And it was a bit much at times. But despite that, I felt he did a good job because he really did nail the conflicted and just really desperate aspects of Sean's character, because at this point in his life, everything's just been turned upside down and he doesn't really know what his purpose is and why he's here and why he was chosen to be the Guyver. And so he does a good job with that inner conflict. And when it comes to the scenes where he's dubbing the Guyver in action, it felt more genuine. And you also did buy Sean as a hero more than you did Sean in the first film, because of the fact that Armstrong is just nowhere near as strong of an actor as David Hayter, which is crazy because David Hayter is not really known for being really an actor. He's known for being a voiceover guy. He's known for being Solid Snake. And I still came away feeling that he should have been in more roles because he just had something about him. There was some nice charisma, and he just had a good presence to him, and that you definitely felt that when he did the voiceover dubbing for the Guyver, when the Guyver was in action and when he was fighting, or when he was trying to uh, save Corey or stop the Guyver Zoanoid. And speaking of Corey, I legitimately really thought Kathy Christopherson also did a good job as Corey. She had a certain personality of her own that was pretty notable. And I really did like the chemistry that she had with David Hayter. Bruno Patrick as Arlen Crane. There are some times where, yeah, he's a little too hammy, or you could argue that he's trying a little too hard to be a villain, but I still thought he was serviceable at least. And that's more than I can say for a lot of the villains in the first movie. So I didn't think he was amazing, but I thought he was at least decent enough. And when you had him in the suit, the makeup effects when he transforms into his Zoanoid form, which is in a lot of ways the Gill Man from Monster Squad. So when he transforms into the Gill Man and messes up some people, or when he's the Guyver Zoanoid, I thought that was some nice, uh, decent work. Christopher Michael, who plays Commander Atkins, the FBI guy, he honestly kind of sucked. Uh, he was trying, but I just I didn't really buy it with him. I felt he was really wooden. Um, Stuart Weiss was a similar kind of thing as Corey's dad, Marcus. And Billy Lee, who played Misky in this, she was only in one scene, and she was a million times better than the other actress who played that character in the first movie. Like, she was so good in that scene. I'm like, why wasn't she cast in the Guyver? Why did we cast Vivian Wu? Um, there's a few other actors and actresses, but really that's the main cast. Um, and I want to give a lot of props to the suit actors because they deserve a lot more credit than they get when it comes to these kind of movies. Anthony Hook as the Guyver, I mean, his ability to just do so many moves in the suit was just astonishing. I mean, the flexibility, he's doing flips, he's doing jump kicks, he's doing all kinds of movement in this suit. And it looks the opposite of stiff. And you would think because it's, a bulky suit, it would be stiff, but that wasn't the case at all. Like, it looked really good. And a big part of that is because Anthony Hook is a very talented suit actor, very talented martial artist. Brian Simpson as the Arlen Crane Zoanoid was another impressive performance. But Tatsuro Koike, I probably fucked up his last name, but Tatsuro Koike as the Guyver Zoanoid, that's another really impressive and incredible um, bit of suit acting because he was also very flexible. But I love how the two suit actors are able to really showcase different styles for each of the characters. Guyver has a different style of fighting than the Guyver Zoanoid. So it makes for their fight to be something that is not only, for the most part, unique, but even more exciting and even more fun to watch because of the different variances with their style and what they are capable of doing. And the rest of the Zoanoid actors, they did fine as well. But really, the main attractions for me are Anthony Hook and Tatsuro Koike, uh, Guyver and the Guyver Zoanoid suit actors. Uh, from a technical level, the film is, for the most part, pretty terrific. I thought it had some nice cinematography as well by Michael G. Wojciechowski, especially in the sequences that take place on the alien ship or during the fight scenes or the opening sequence that took place at night on the city streets, or the flashback scenes, the scenes where Sean is getting an image from the aliens about the origin of the Guyver. The editing by Russ Kingston and Steve Wang, I also thought was really good. Really nice, solid, sturdy editing. Uh, really helped the film flow as well as it does during the sequences where there's a lot of stuff going on, whether it's the fights or whether it's a quick cut or a flash to a flashback or so on. I've always felt that it was a legitimately well edited film. And the music by Les Claypool III, there are some bits of the score that are a little but the main theme, I thought it was badass, instantly memorable, just a really cool theme for what I honestly feel is a cool superhero and a cool film. And it just fit to have this thumping, just really badass synth metallic score and main theme for Guyver. And yeah, the running time is a bit too long, 123 minutes. It didn't need to be that long. Cut out some of the subplots. Cut out at least one of the scenes that are featuring characters just digging for the spaceship. Like, you didn't really need as many scenes going on with that. Trim down the love story a little bit. I do like it, and I think it does a good job building it up and making you care about these characters and actually become invested in the connection between Sean and Corey, but you could have trimmed a little more of that relationship and those building moments to help the film build a little bit more momentum and to make it so it has a little bit faster of a pace. This should have been 90 minutes or an hour and 40. It did not need to be 2 hours. Like, that was just too much. And a big part of that is just the middle. The middle just sags. And that's why it does kind of feel a little bit too long at times. And that's one of the main problems I have with the film is that it's not paced as tightly as it could be. But even though it does have flaws, I think this is a fantastic film. I really like Guyver 2 Dark Hero, and I would highly recommend it to anybody, especially if you're a fan of superhero or comic book films, or you're a fan of martial arts movies. If you like the Power Rangers, you definitely should add this to your watch list. It's a movie that I think is a legitimately good film on numerous different levels. It's still one of the most impressive direct-to-video, low-budget films of its type that I've seen. When it comes to a low-budget comic book superhero film, like, this has got to be right up there with one of the best looking and one of the best overall quality films when it comes to that low of a budget. And it also helps immensely that it's rated R because the anime is ultra violent and gory. The manga is gory. The PG-13 first film, the Guyver, has a lot of bloody moments, but it feels neutered because there are scenes where it cuts away from violence because you can't do that with a PG-13 rating. But here it's so much more visceral, it's so much more strong, and as a result, the character that Guyver just comes across so much more memorable and menacing and just like a total fucking badass. Like, he really does. The Guyver is a badass in this movie. And as a result, I think the film is a pretty badass film. So yeah, thanks for watching my review of Guyver 2 Dark Hero. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.